on any kind of interface that you're working with for any kind of solution. Now, for the duration of this meeting, I'm going to go ahead and keep everybody muted just so we can kind of kill the background noise. But please do ask questions during this webinar. I would love for y'all to go ahead and include them in the chat feature. And then we can address everything at the end of the webinar during a questions session. And I do want to make some quick introductions here. For one, probably the most important would be Matt and Holly. Holly's not on this screen, but Matt and Holly worked very hard to make WebCheckout WCAG compliant. So it's a very accessible interface. So I've brought them here to answer any questions, as well as Matt's going to perform to make this webinar absolutely beautiful. So I appreciate all of her creativity and her time. And I'm the account executive. I'm the fellow who works with higher education all the time to understand use cases and make sure that WebCheckout is a good fit for your operation. So just a little bit of background information on us. I'm sure most of you already know what WebCheckout is, but WebCheckout has been around for over 2 decades now. And our biggest focus has been pretty much education, although goodness, we've seen biology equipment, we've seen just straight laptops, we've even seen furniture. So it really goes a lot of different directions. We proudly serve over 300 organizations worldwide, and we joined the Constellation software family back in 2017. So we have a few big objectives that we want to achieve here. Number one is going to be to educate. Again, could be any interface that you have for your students and staff. We're also going to mention a few key principles of WCAG compliance. And then Matt's going to show us around Patron Portal, which is our mobile reservation solution for students. And he'll demonstrate some of the exact WCAG criteria in play. So the big reason we're trying a challenge for administrators, for staff, and for ourselves, we have to provide the same level of education for everyone. And laws have been created in several countries globally, not just for higher ed, for everything, but there is a focus on higher education to make sure that students and staff with disabilities get the same experience. And some of these laws include the ADA, so that would be in the US where I am, the ACA is in Canada, and the EU, the Equality Act is in the UK. So thanks to the World Wide Web, to help us achieve well-rounded accessibility to our websites. They created the WCAG guidelines, which are globally embraced as the correct steps for making your website more accessible. And these steps, well, actually the University of North Florida, one of our partners, they helped us to achieve these steps several years. This benefits everybody on campus, really, students and staff alike. For example, I know at this point, on average, 19% of campus students have some form of a disability. 5.8% have disabilities related to sight and hearing, which is a big focus for WCAG compliance. But also, this is for yourselves. There's a considerable decrease in liability by making sure that every interface you have is going to be fully accessible. As I mentioned, there are laws to protect citizens and in most countries around the world. For example, again, we have the ADA, so the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the ADA specifically says that post-secondary institutions have to provide students with disabilities an equal opportunity to obtain the same result, gain the same benefit, or reach the same level of achievement. And this is a standard, the WCAG standard, that has stood the test of multiple court rulings in the US. So as far as WCAG goes, of course, it's not just simple. You can't just have WCAG. We have several levels of WCAG compliant, single A, double A, and triple A WCAG compliance. The more A's you have, the more accessibility you have. So I'm going to give you some examples of this. For one, double A is important because it does have mandates on color contrast. So there's a big focus with AA on being able to easily read the content that's on your site. As an example of AAA web pages, they cannot contain anything that flashes more than 3 times in any 1 second period to reduce the chances a person has of a seizure. It doesn't completely eliminate the chance of having a seizure, but it does greatly decrease that chance. Now, most organizations, especially schools, are trying to comply with AA, which means they have to meet 38 different forms of criteria. And these criteria, it would be everything. In order to do AA, you have to meet everything for single A. So the combination of single A and AA is 38 criteria. And I want to point out just a few of these criteria to kind of give you an idea of what you're looking at here. The first is consistent navigation. This is part of AA. And consistent navigation, it's very much like it sounds. It's creating a user-friendly and very, very predictable page. For higher education, this will help students with cognitive limitations, impaired vision, and students with intellectual disabilities. Another criteria for level AA is the ability to adjust contrast. And we discussed this a minute ago. There are some exceptions to this criteria when it comes to large text, decorations on your website, and logos. The primary focus is just on the basic content. And this is recommended because students with impaired vision have a hard time reading text that does not contrast with the background. And this becomes even more difficult if a student or staff member is colorblind. I would argue that the next criteria, resizing text, it really does have the same end goal as contrast. We need to make sure that all text is legible on your websites. So increasing your font size up to 200% is going to help your students with impaired vision. The trick is finding a way to do that without absolutely ruining the appearance of your website. And Matt will demonstrate this feature in WebCheckout in just a moment. The keyboard criteria is one of the basics. It's part of single A, which means it also has to be included in AA. In short, you have to offer a way to navigate a website without a mouse or a touch screen. This function helps blind and visually impaired users, and it also helps users with hand tremors who have difficulty navigating with a mouse. In our experience, schools who follow WCAG guidelines, they tend to also employ a screen reader as well. Screen readers convert your text into speech so that visually impaired users can listen to your content. Screen readers aren't specifically mentioned in WCAG requirements, but I'm sure you can understand why this would be a very obvious need for an accessibility initiative. And also with WebCheckout in particular, we've included a couple other examples of accessibility that are outside of WCAG, and we'll discuss these two, we'll demonstrate these to you shortly. Our mobile reservation solution patron portal, it's a responsive website. So that means that it conforms to fit on any screen that's opened on. And this is good for students who don't own a PC or a laptop, or they just aren't in a position to access one. Patron Portal will also make changes related to your location, even globally. So that includes currency changes, time zone changes, and even language translation. Again, that's not something that WCAG requires, but it's an example of accessibility one way or the other. And now I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton over to Matt, who's going to demonstrate how a lot of these features work within Patron Portal itself. So I'll go ahead and stop my screen share, and Matt, take it away. I think I may have to unmute Matt.
Thank you, Sean. I am unmuted now, and hopefully everyone can see my screen. Good afternoon to everyone. Today I'm going to demonstrate the ways WebCheckout has solved some of the challenges posed by the WCAG guidelines in our Patron Portal application. I'm going to start off by demonstrating our solutions to two of the guidelines concurrently: keyboard navigation and assistive technology in the form of the screen reader, and in this case, in the form of Chrome Vox screen reader extension. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn on the screen reader, and then I'm going to set my mouse aside, leaving the cursor in place, and only use my keyboard to navigate through. And I'm going to let Chrome Vox detail out every element on the page.
Chrome Vox spoken feedback is ready.
As you can tell, that is not my voice anymore.
Patron Portal tab. Message of the day. Enter dialog. Close modal. But have a wonderful day. Close. Close. Button.
So
Exit
now,
dialog. Navigation header application.
So now I'm going to tab through the application itself.
Exited application. WebCheckout Patron Portal. Link. Toggle accessibility. Link. Help button. Link. Options menu. Currently logged in as Lilu Dallas. Application. Search. Hit enter to open search drawer. Shopping cart 0 items in cart. Home. Select type.
So this
application toolbar. Previous. Button.
This is our carousel of different resource types, which now it enters
accessories.
into.
Audio equipment.
And if you select it.
Heading 1. Audio equipment. Heading. This type has been bookmarked. Audio equipment. This is a caption for the image.
So we have a field called the image caption that can be read in order to substitute anyone who was wondering what that picture would be if you were visually impaired. So I'm gonna shift tab back into the main menu.
Application. Main menu. Main menu. Button expanded.
You use the arrow keys to go into menu items.
Home. New reservation. My account. My account. Heading 1. My reservations. Heading 2. Table. Start time. Thursday. Mar 4. 2021 5 p.m. End time. Friday. Mar 5. 2021 4 p.m.
So the importance of this is that when you go into a table, that the header is read for each element of the table.
Allocation, CK32.
And
items, accessories, audio equipment.
So I'm going to go ahead and
extensions tab.
Turn Chrome Vox off so I can further explain the next solution that we've come up with, which is for consistent navigation. So an example of a solution for consistent navigation would be that in every modal, you have a consistent use of buttons. So our action buttons are always in blue. Our close and cancel buttons will always be in the light gray. And the primary action button will always be to the left, and the close and cancel will always be to the right. So in this case, if let me get my cursor back to a more normal size. If we edit this reservation, you'll see we come to this modal where we have the same instance, primary action in blue and on the left, close cancel on the right. So let's just pick one of the secondary. And again, primary action on the left in blue, the close cancel on the right in the light gray. Next, I'd like to show everyone a little bit about responsiveness and the increase of the text size and the increase of and mobile responsiveness kind of go hand in hand when you're solving these problems. So first, let's just increase our text size to 200%. And you'll see that the screen has adjusted so that we haven't lost any of our content. Obviously, we're still going to be scrolling, but none of the elements have gone missing, as well as on the My Account page. You may truncate information, but you don't want to lose the information in its entirety or functionality. Oh, I'm sorry. And then the next thing I wanted to show in this tab, we can see what the application would look like on an iPhone. So we can close through. We can see that we still have all of the content, all of the information is still there, just in a different form that fits that screen. And then again, this is on an iPad or a simulated iPad. We still can get to all of our information and didn't lose any content. Finally, what I'd like to show off is how we solved the, let me get my screen back to normal size. We solved the contrast guideline by adding an accessibility toggle. And what that does is it switches the CSS file to change the text color where we need it to change in order to meet the 3:1 contrast ratio. In this way, you can still keep your branding in the style sheet you want for people who don't have visibility issues. And you can still somewhat stylize and try to maintain that branding for people with visual impairments. So those are the ways that we have met some of the challenges from the WCAG guidelines. I hope that helps in your own efforts for meeting them. I'm going to hand this back to Sean, where he can continue.
Thank you, Matt. And sorry, guys, if it's freezing a little bit. I'm working from home and not the best internet connection. But another thing that we want to leave you with, I hope that did help out what Matt was going over, but we're also going to send out a message after this meeting that's going to include a list of all the WCAG requirements. So that would be for single A, double A, and triple A. I created a blog post a few months ago too, what it means to be ADA compliant. I recognize this only deals with the US, but some of these aspects may be applicable to you as well. And we're also going to send you a website that's going to give you instructions on how to make your website responsive. But now I'd like to go ahead and open the floor up to questions, mostly for Matt and Holly. Does anybody have technical questions on what's needed to make your website more accessible?
Hey, Sean, this is actually Carolyn. I just wanted to offer a question that I know is fairly common with our existing clients, and that has to do with customizations. So when sometimes we offer the capability to help our clients customize Patron Portal to meet their brand standards and things like that. With WCAG, how do you keep compliance when you're working with a customized student interface?
Hey, Carolyn. In the case where we're hired by the client to customize Patron Portal, we go through the same accessibility evaluation that we use for the base application. And for people who are working on their own, both Chrome, Firefox provide very helpful tools and extensions for testing compliance. A few of those I could list here. There's one called Site Improve Accessibility Checker, which is one we use internally. There's another one called the WCAG Accessibility Audit Developer UI, which our development team uses. A couple of other handy extensions are the A11Y color blindness empathy test, which is honestly just kind of an interesting tool to see how people with color blindness see the world. Another one that's helpful is the Disable HTML extension.
Awesome, thanks for speaking to that one, Matt. Looks like we still don't have any other questions coming up in the chat. So I guess just one other question that we do get fairly often is how do we know which WCAG guidelines that are that we have to follow with WebCheckout?
Well, the same guidelines apply to everyone, at least within the United States. And I believe that they're adopted internationally as well. I don't know the specifics on that but the best source of which guidelines are currently enforced in the US can be found at section508.gov. However, it is a really good idea to be familiar with the more recent versions of the guidelines that are always being worked on. And that can be found at w3.org. And there's specific, as you go, go through their website, you'll find they have the standard guidelines, and then you can also find their new proposed guidelines.
Thank you, Matt. Carolyn, are there any other questions?
None that I can see as of right now. I think we are all set.
Okay, well that keeps us right on time. So for you who appreciate it, who showed up today, I really appreciate y'all coming. If you do have any questions along the inventory management lines, which is usually what we're focusing on, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'd love to know about your use case to see if WebCheckout can help. Otherwise, we wish you all a very good rest of the week.